Today, we're looking at Colorverse C Europa. Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm an ink guy. I get inks, test them, and share the results with you. Now, Colorverse C Europa is a red ink. And to make sure I have a range of experience with this ink, I do the writing samples. I put the ink into a different pen for a day. I then put it into a Levenger TrueWriter with a broad nib to take my notes for this video. Now, before we get to the writing samples, let's look at the sciencey bits. Up first is the chromatography, and I agree with Vita that I've learned a lot by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. I put a line of ink down and immediately put it into water for 10 to 15 seconds. And what we see is this gray that has seeped into the filter paper really immediately. Now it really doesn't push up very much at all, that gray, but then we see the red come in and a bit of yellow across the top. The one on the right, I let dry for 10 minutes before I dunk it into water. And the interesting thing that occurs is that gray does not budge. It is a very clear gray line. It's completely separated from the red and then the yellow that's at the very top. It makes me feel that that gray might be a bit resistant. Resistance tests are done to see how this ink can be expected to perform on the page, and more importantly, how hard it might be to clean from your pens. Now, I let the smear dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, it handles amazing. That extra fine is still an extra fine. There's no blowout, no spread, no nothing occurs. It doesn't even realize that that's happened. A great ink for a note-taking situation. Now, water is only removing the red. All of that gray that we saw in the chromatography is still very much there and not budging from water. Pen Flush has the exact same problem. It's removing all of the colors other than gray from this paper. It leaves all of that gray behind. 1/3 bleach solution is completely removing it from the paper, and if you had to use a 1/3 bleach solution, then make sure that you rinse your pen out with water immediately so you don't rust your metal parts. For the inks I've tested, I have found an average viscosity of 2.5, with the realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. Colorverse C Europa has a viscosity of 3.59, making this a very dry ink. To find my average dry times, I use my writing samples done with the extra fine and medium nib on Clairefontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper. For the inks I've tested, I've found an average dry time of 17 seconds, with a realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds. Colorverse C Europa, despite being so very dry, has an average dry time of 13 seconds, making it normal. Now, let's look at the writing samples. I picked this ink up in sample form, and to keep my writing samples consistent, I use a Jinhao 159 with a Goulet 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X450 with a Goulet medium, and a Jinhao X750 with a Goulet extra fine. Let's take a look at the Clairefontaine. We get no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 is a very, very, very light tone. It has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, no shading. The extra fine is significantly darker than the 1.1, but it's not a dark tone. The 1.1 the extra fine has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, no shading, 8 seconds to dry. The medium is a significantly darker tone than the extra fine. And this is the tone where I would prefer to have it. They just feel too light for me. The medium has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, no shade, 12 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show us no color variation. We didn't expect it and we didn't get it. The smear test, you could actually recover that if you smeared while you were writing. Tomoe River, no bleeding. Look how light this is. There's like no ghosting on the extra fine or the 1.1, only minor ghosting on the medium. The 1.1 is a super light tone, way too light for me. It has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, no shade. It is just god-awful light. The extra fine is a little bit darker than the 1.1. It has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, or shade, 12 seconds to dry. The medium, though, is a significantly darker tone, again, where I would prefer this to be. The medium has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, no shade,
20 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show us no color variation. We didn't expect it and we didn't get it. In the smear test, there is no recovering if you smeared that while you were writing. Rhodia. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1, way too light a tone. Way too light. This is an ink that I'm so disappointed in, because my first writing was in the dark and I was like, man, that's nice. But this was, it's just so light, it's unusable. Please tell me if you like ink that light, but tell me. Put it in the comments. Say, yeah, you know what? I love it when an ink is so light that other people can't read it. The 1.1 is no feather, spread, halo, sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is a few shades, 3-4 shades darker than the 1.1. The extra fine is no feather, spread, halo, sheen, no shade, 9 seconds to dry. The medium is a significantly darker tone than the 1.1, or the extra fine. It is the only usable tone to me. You need a very wet pen for this ink to work well, or it's The medium has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, no shade, 14 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show us no color variation, and we got none. And the smear test, yeah, you could recover it. Surprising. Life paper, it's one of my favorite papers. It is just so nice to write on. It has no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 is incredibly too light to even deal with, but it has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, or shade. So there's that. The extra fine is a significantly darker tone. It's like 3-4 tones darker. It has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, and look at that. We get some shading spots, like H in the, like the K in quick, the X in fox, the R in over, the S in jumps, HE in the, LA in lazy. Lots of shading here. The only place I see shading with this ink. 6 seconds to dry. The medium has no feather, spread, halo, sheen. It has some shading going on, not nearly as nice as what's going on in the extra fine, but the tone is much more usable. Its tone is way darker than all the others. But there are some shading spots that occur, like the beginning of the B and the top of the B are lighter than the rest of brown. The middle of the F, from the down hoop up to the O, is lighter than the rest of fox. The Y in lazy gets a bit lighter, so we see some shading here on life paper. And the tone is usable with the medium. The extra fine had some very nice shading. It's just too light a tone. The medium took 11 seconds to dry. The scrubby of the extra fine and the medium showed us some color variation, and we got color variation in both, and great right here. Unfortunately, it's just too light. The smear test, you could recover this if you smeared while you were writing. Levenger paper. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 is way too dark to even consider using, but there it is. It has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, no shade. The extra fine is a slightly darker tone than the 1.1. The extra fine has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, and no shading. 4 seconds to dry. Now medium becomes a significantly darker tone. A usable tone. It has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, no shade, 7 seconds to dry. The scrubby of the extra fine and the medium show us no color variation. We got none. The smear test, still, you could recover this if you smeared while you were writing. Last up, Franklin Christoph. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 is ridiculously light. It has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, or shade. Or real readability. I mean, I can read it, but I would be mad if somebody gave me a page of this to read. That would bother me. The extra fine is a darker tone than the 1.1. It has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, or shade. It took 3 seconds to dry. Medium. Thank you, medium, for being a much, much darker tone so that I can read you easily. You have no feather, spread, halo, sheen, no shade. You took 5 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both of them showed no color variation, and we got none. And the smear test, yes, you could recover this if you smeared while you were writing. And it's so weird because of how much of it is just so light. But that is all that I have for the writing sample.
Instead of finding inks that look like Colorverse C Europa, I would prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. I wanted a nice blue, and I just felt festive. I went with a shimmering ink. I chose Colorverse Cat because it's a nice shimmering blue. Before I give my opinion on this ink, I would ask, if you've enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. And if it's your first time here, I would invite you to subscribe. So what do I think of Colorverse C Europa? I think you get really nice color variation on this ink depending on the nib and flow of the pen that you choose. Now for me, I need to use a wetter pen to make it a bit darker so that it's easy for me to read, because in a finer or drier pen, it's just too light a shade for me. Thanks for watching.